welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. And yesterday, I got to go out to dinner with a friend, and it was great. It's like when I am doing my thing, my routine, my weekly routine, my daily routines, I do things like I was sitting here thinking, okay, it's time for me to record. I don't want to. That's what I was thinking. And then I thought, just hit, just hit record and the rest will come, the desire to do it will come. The kind of like what I always say, put a smile on your face and you'll get a smile on the inside. Well, when I was talking to her last night, I was getting a little emotional about feeling like, yeah, I'm going back to the psychiatrist again next week. And it's like I thought I had dealt with my feelings about, you know, going from having a career to now being disabled and trying to figure out what my trajectory is kind of thing. And we discussed like she said, when I see you smiling and happy, I think I wouldn't be able to do that. That's what she said. Like, I wouldn't be able to be as positive as you are. And I was thinking, it made me really think about what is going on inside of me. When I do things like think I don't want to record and then I hit record anyway. I've been talking to you guys about the next right thing and put a smile on your face and a smile will come on the inside. Like all of these inspirational things that help me keep moving forward, keep putting one foot in front of the other. And last night, what her and I were talking about made me curious about whether some of this stuff that I'm doing is ignoring what maybe sadness I feel, that I just continue to move forward without crying or without feeling sad. Um, I just keep doing. I guess I feel like if I stop, what is that going to do for me? What I told her last night was if I let myself get sad, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of what that sadness will do to me. I'm afraid of depression because I know what I'm capable of if I let myself start thinking. And I think that there's a fine line between allowing myself to feel that stuff and in order to look at it in a healthy way and letting it control me or letting it take over. Um, so I think some of these things that I'm thinking I need to be able to articulate to my psychiatrist because I think when I actually sit down with her virtually and start talking about all of this stuff, I lack the words to describe what's going on. And yet, when I just sit here and talk to you about it, um, it seems to flow. I don't know if it's because nobody's looking back at me and I am essentially alone when I'm talking to you guys. And so I just talk about truly what's going on. And I remember the last time I was talking to the psychiatrist, there was almost this level of, it sounds silly to say, but an entertainment factor. Like, I need to engage her. I know that sounds crazy. Maybe it doesn't. I can't be unique in that, but feeling like I need to connect the dots instead of her. Like, I'm going to her for help. I don't need to give her the solution before I give her the problem, right? I mean, that makes sense to me. And I totally recognize I was doing that last time. I wanted so much to show how I am finding solutions in my situation rather than finding out how she can offer me solutions that I haven't thought of. It's an ego thing. It's absolutely an ego thing. So, it gives me a lot to marinate on today. Um, to look at how honest I'm really being with myself. If these tools that I talk about so much are in any way unhealthy. So this morning's meeting was talking about step 3, but as with all of the topics in my program that I hear over and over and over again, we read step 3 from the 12 and 12. And what that means is uh, step 3 is a willingness to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand Him. And the 12 and 12 is a smaller book from Alcoholics Anonymous that has all of the 12 steps in it with an explanation of what all of them are and like almost a story of what they are. And then the second 12 in the 12 and 12 are the 12 traditions. Um, so we were reading from that, and what struck me this morning was this progression of acceptance to willingness to action. And when I started being willing to do something about my disease, even though I didn't necessarily understand what I was getting myself into. Um, it had to start with acceptance. I had to accept that there was something very wrong with me and I needed help, that I was very sick. And I let myself get to the point where it was questionable to the doctors if my liver was going to start healing itself. And that's why I had to stay longer in the detox facility because I had done so much damage to my body that they had to monitor me more closely. And yet, that was the first time I went to detox, and that wasn't enough to keep me sober because I went back out after a couple months. So I still wasn't willing to put my trust into anything other than that liquid what that was in that glass. Um, I needed to, I guess what they say is the next thing you're going to lose is more important than the booze. I needed to get to that point. Um, I had more trust in the liquid in my glass than in a human being. I had more faith in me being able to resolve my own problems than I did in any human being being able to help me. And honestly, that remained even after I got sober. Because that story that I tell all the time about being in San Francisco and realizing that if I were to drink, my higher power would know. I would know and my higher power would know. And so I wasn't hiding it from what really mattered to me, what I needed to put my faith in order to really stay sober. And and I did at that point. I wanted to stay sober. I realized that um I couldn't do it anymore. Um, it remains fascinating to me that I had that moment, that that happened for me. And um, to this day, I believe that my faith in this higher power that I have constructed for myself, um, the higher power of my understanding, is more impactful to me than my faith in my fellowship. I know that that is seems to be the way that my mindset is, that I've got that first, then I've got other people, um, and then I've got myself, my decisions. Boris is dreaming and he's barking under his breath. He's sleeping on my lap. So that acceptance started first, that I really am sick, and if I keep doing this, I'm gonna die. I couldn't have the willingness to do anything unless I accepted that. And then with that came that, okay, if I'm gonna stop drinking, then if I'm going to do something about it, um, I have to be willing to have faith in something because I couldn't do it on my own. I accepted at that point when I was walking around the block over and over again in San Francisco, I accepted that I was an alcoholic because I remember walking around the block and thinking, I'm an alcoholic, but I want to drink. And knowing that that was a bad idea. Um, and that desperation, like almost squeezed through a sieve and spit out willingness. And the willingness was, okay, I have to have faith in something else. I will walk, I will walk this sidewalk over and over and over again, repeatedly, if I only rely on myself. And isn't that just a example of continuing to do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results? I kept walking around that block over and over and over again, expecting my self-talk to change. And I just kept doing it. And I kept thinking every time I walked, every time I made a loop, I was thinking the same thing. I'm an alcoholic and I want to drink. And I recognized, I'm telling you, Boris is making some crazy noises. Um, I recognized somehow that nothing was going to change unless something changed. And what changed was my faith has to be bigger than myself. And I began to have the willingness to depend on something or someone else. And then once that happened, I could take action. But I needed those two things to precede the action. Sometimes it feels like, and this is when I do the next right thing, the action comes before the willingness. It does. Like there are times that I put 2 feet on the ground and I start moving before I want to, before I accept that I have to, before my willingness follows my action. It happens sometimes. And those are what I like to think of as the blind falls when you um, close your eyes and you fall backward into somebody else's arms. That for me is the next right thing. The next right thing is when the order becomes it gets turned around. The next right thing is when the action precedes the willingness and the acceptance. But I can do that now. Um, and it started early in sobriety because I saw the result of taking the action. So when I first got sober, I had to accept that I was an alcoholic. I had to put the key of willingness in the door, and and then from that point on, each action was pushing the door open a little further. And because I experienced that, now I know that if I walk through that door, this is what's going to happen. Good things are going to happen. And that's the next right thing. So turning it over is having that kind of faith or experience. For me, turning it over is I'm going to do this even though I'm not quite sure. I'm not 100% certain that I accept what is happening, but I'm going to turn it over anyway. And that has been experiential for me. Um, and it's working. It's been from using my God box and trusting in all the stuff that I hear in the program. So that there comes the faith in my fellowship. So I started with faith in my higher power. One may argue with that because I started going to meetings before I started praying. Um, but the the faith that actually kept me from picking up a drink was my faith in a higher power. It was not necessarily the fellowship. I can split hairs about it, but um, I lost my train of thought. I have to do that every day this week, apparently. Um, I don't have to understand why why it works. Step three in the 12 and 12 talks about depending on electricity, even though we don't really understand it. Now, this book was written quite some time ago, but it doesn't matter. Like, I can depend on things that I don't quite understand, right? Chatty McChatterton is a great example. You guys know him as ChatGPT. I depend on him to help me with doing the stuff I need to do for the podcast. And I know that everything that Chatty says is not true, but I depend on him to help me. Um, I Sorry, my head is not doing well this week. Um, I don't have to understand artificial intelligence to rely on him to help me with some stuff. Um, I don't have to understand electricity to plug my hair dryer in and use it. And I don't have to understand my higher power, right? The higher power of not my understanding or whatever that person in my life said. I don't have to understand really what's happening to depend on it. And there is a healthy dependence versus an unhealthy dependence in our lives. And I'm constantly trying to decipher which thing I rely on that is healthy and which is unhealthy. And a lot of times, some of these decisions that I make, doing the next right thing, or a lot of the stuff that I talk about, I don't know if those things are unhealthy. Like I'm questioning some of it today and last night because I don't know if it's keeping me from sitting in my mental state that might not be completely healthy right now. You know? I mean, sorry that my words are so hard to come by right now, but I don't know. I'm having some major symptoms. So, what I can do, the best thing I can do in this situation is to use my experience to see that I can take the action that I took last time, which is call my psychiatrist and have an appointment with her, and then have the willingness. Like, I just picked up the phone and did it, and I still don't want to go. So maybe there's a distinction between willingness and not wanting to. I suppose that there is. And maybe I'm lumping them together and I shouldn't be. But this is just the stuff that I'm thinking about today. And fair enough, right? That's what I do. I just come here and spill to you what's going on in my mind. And sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. I trust that it seems to make sense to you guys because you keep hitting play. And sometimes the things that I need to depend on don't feel good. Alcohol used to feel good, and I depended on it. And some of the things that have to depend on now, they don't feel good at first, but they feel good later. And that is the difference between immediate gratification and trying to help the future version of me. Um, I have to keep relying on other people, and that seems to be the one that I pull away from. Like my whole higher power thing, it remains and it's not static, it keeps growing. But my dependence on the fellowship and other people seems to waver because I have a choice to not isolate, to reach out, to ask for help, or to crawl into my own safe little dark place. And sometimes I'm crawling inside my dark place without realizing it. Um, I'm just going to stop there because I'm really having a hard time putting my words together, which can be frustrating and embarrassing. But I know you guys understand. So I think I've been a little too busy this week. So anyway, we'll just stop there. I got a lot out of it, even though I'm having a hard time. So thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.